Alright, we are back with a build update on this Pilot RC Slick 360 that I've been working on. I haven't gotten very far, and I found that there's a lot of things to like about this Slick, and there's a few things I think Pilot RC could have done better, and some things that I'm actually going to modify because I think it just should be better. So where I got to right now is I've got all my hinges glued in. And as I started looking over the fuselage to put servos in and start looking at where I wanted to route everything, that's when I started noticing, okay, there's a few things that I'd like to see changed. So some of the things I really like about this Slick are, I like the black fiberglass. I think it gives it a really good look, it gives it a really strong build, but you don't have the issues with your receiver antennas that you have with carbon fiber. There's a few pieces of carbon fiber running down these stringers and across here, and these are great. These give a lot of strength, but the fact that this is fiberglass and not carbon fiber, it makes running your antennas so much easier. So I really like that Pilot did that. So a couple of things I could have done better. On the website, this is pictured as clear, and on my last plane, this was like a translucent white. I really like it being clear or white because when you put your wing tube in, you can for sure see that it's in. So as you're putting a battery in, you can notice, oh, that doesn't look right. And it will save an airplane from ripping the wings off. So I really wish they would have kept this clear or done like a translucent fiberglass tube. But I mean, it's good and strong. There's nothing actually wrong with it. It could have been better. Another thing is they've changed some things on this one versus what they have on the website. On the website, they actually have the servo or the receiver mounted right here with all the wiring, and it gave a good chance to tidy up a lot of the wires. Well, they actually changed, and the receiver is supposed to sit right here on this little tray. But when I got looking at everything and I sized out the tail servos and the 24-inch extensions that it comes with, the wires would come up the side and you would have to send them straight across into the receiver. Otherwise, they just wouldn't fit. And I just don't like that. I like my airplanes to be nice and tidy, get everything to where you can work on it and it's not in your way. So what I've come down to is I'm actually going to move the receiver back here. That way the servo wires coming from the tail fit nicely. Everything will fit from the front. I may need to extend the ESC wire slightly, the throttle, to get it to here, but everything else is really going to tidy up. I'm going to add a little bar across the top just so I can tie my wires to it. And I will have to extend the temperature telemetry to the motor because it just wasn't going to fit. Even if I put it here, by the time I got the telemetry to it, it was going to just be really tight. So I settled on just getting a small extension, and that should get me here no problem. I should be able to really tidy that up. A few things that I like to do in the build that are going to take me a little bit more time is anywhere I have a wire crossing a wooden beam, I like to take fuel tubing and put it on to guarantee that wire is never going to rub. And this model, I feel like it's even more important. So this black fiberglass is great, but if you feel it, it's got a little bit of an edge to it. And being an electric build, it's not going to vibrate very much. But when I twist and turn and flip it around doing 3D, these wires are going to move around. So I either have to tie it down to a sharp edge, or it's possible to rub it. So I like taking fuel tubing and just splitting one side. It fits on really nice, and then I'll put a thin piece or a thin CA on it, and it'll be there forever. and I'll never have issues out of that wiring. Another thing I like about the Pilot RC, but you kind of have to know about it, is it might be hard to see, but there is a CG and a CG mark in the frame. And initially it was kind of confusing. This is my first Pilot RC airplane, and I had read in the laser manual that there's a hole and some rods that they send for doing your center of gravity tests. So this one is actually even a little bit more different. So this hole right here is actually the CG. So there's some dimples in here. I did not get a rod that I found to put through here, but according to the laser manual, what you're supposed to do is put a rod through here, leave the wing just a hair loose, and then you can run a string up and you can pick it up by the string, and that'll set your initial CG. You may have to change it to the way you like it, but at least that'll get you good and flying. I do like the new system of putting the wing on. It just saves you from having to screw and unscrew the wing bolts as much. Slip it in, close it, and then finish tightening down the wing bolt. Different than the website is the canopy latch system. So what it showed and indicated was it had that bent wire that they went to recently with a little J turn in it, but this one doesn't. This one's got two canopy latches, and that latches under a hook on either side in the canopy. I actually like this better. That bent wire, I was actually concerned a little bit that over time it might loosen up and just not quite keep the tension. So these are great. It's a little awkward to get both of these pushed back and get the canopy up, but I think I'll get used to it pretty quick. You just kind of push it with your fingers and lift the canopy with your thumb at the same time, and it's not bad. For the electrics, I'm in Florida, so it gets really hot when we're flying, and the only exits that Pilot really provided and show are the exits up front here, and I really don't feel like that's enough. The ESC is going to sit right under here, and I just don't feel like that's going to pull enough heat off the ESC. The battery's going to get hot. You got these electronics back here, which is pretty minor as far as heat goes, but the rest of this stuff really gets hot, and it really needs to stay cool. So I am going to add an air exit back here, and I will probably build a little scoop to kind of direct everything out. I know that as the air goes over, it's actually pulling the air out, but it'll kind of help everything guide right to that hole. It'll keep plenty of airflow going through here, so as I get slow and low, it'll keep everything nice and cool. So that's definitely something I'm going to change. Just really don't feel like there's enough heat. If I was running gas, I'd probably be fine with having this be my only air exit, but the fact that I'm doing electric, I really feel like it needs more cooling. One thing I thought that Pilot could have done better, and I felt like they have done better when I looked at their stuff in the past, is the covering, and especially where the surfaces meet. I personally don't like seeing all these lines where the covering doesn't meet and it's a different color. So that's something I'd like to clean up eventually. I'm actually trying to get this color through Chief Aircraft from Pilot. This is an Oracoat covering color, and they actually can't get it right now. So I've got them looking into that, but one of the things I did is I did clean up this tail. And to me, I really think that looks so much better when that color matches than when you have those extra lines. That's a preference thing, I know, but I really like the way this looks a lot better. Another thing that took me a little while to figure out was some of these bolts. They're not labeled. It was kind of hard to figure out what they were doing, and especially since I was doing an electric build, I got a little confused and it took me a minute to figure out that I wasn't going to need some of this because I was doing an electric build. So because of that, I just wanted to show everybody real quick what these bolts are meant for, because even in the laser manual they show it a little bit different. So this piece actually comes out, and it took me a minute to figure out where this goes. This is in the manual, I just missed it initially. But if you're doing gas, you need to reinforce this box up here. And once you get done reinforcing it and doing anything you need to do to it, this piece actually glues in. So they give you this piece so that you can get to this box, get it all reinforced nice, and then you can put this on. So that's actually really helpful. So they give you the tail wheel and everything to go with it. A lot of people on the forums complained about this tail wheel on the laser, that it was breaking even just on taxi test. I feel like they changed this. This one actually looks pretty robust to me. It looks like this will do fine. But one thing that's different that I'm not sure if I quite like, see if I can get in here. So it comes with the 2 screws to mount the main tail wheel to the bottom of the fuse, and then it comes with another of the ball links to do the tiller part. But there's a hole in the bottom of the rudder down here, but there's no screw provided. There's no way to actually put that in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that hole, I'm going to run a screw into it and put some CA on it and get that nice and firm. And then I'm going to cut the head off the screw and then screw this ball link on with a little bit of epoxy on it to really glue it in place so I won't have an issue out of it. But I did think that was odd that there's no real solution to how to get this installed. This is pretty obvious. This is the main axles for the landing gear, a little fuel dot if you are doing gas. This is one of the things that confused me. So these are actually the bolts for mounting the engine. If you're using the gas mounts that they send, you'll need the blind nuts and the bolts. So the blind nuts will actually go into these bigger holes right here. And when you put those in, then from the front, you can mount the gas. For the electric, you actually need just the bolts, but not the blind nuts. And the bolts will actually go right into here. Once you mount your spacers, figure out how many spacers you need, and then those bolts will be used right there. So if you're doing the electric, you actually don't need these blind nuts. This next set is actually for mounting the landing gear. So that's pretty straightforward. There's some aluminum brackets way down under here, and hopefully that's clear. But they're way down here, so the bolts and the nuts go through here for mounting landing gear. These have the nylock nuts on them and washers, so that'll mount really nice. This pocket actually has 8 screws, and they don't necessarily go together. So if you're using the electric setup, you take 4 of these screws and they actually will mount into these holes. So once you take this mount and get it mounted up here on the nose in its little screw places, that I won't find right now holding the camera. Oh, there we go. You get that, and then you run the screws into these smaller holes. So I'm going to put some epoxy on the back of this, put it in, run the screws in, and that'll be on permanently, no issues. These next screws were kind of confusing me a little bit because of one of the changes I'm making. But these screws are for the ball links that they send you. Now that's another thing I think Pilot could have done better. So this is a ball link off of an old airplane of mine of another name brand. of a similar size, slightly smaller, but a similar size. And this is the one from Pilot. And I just really felt like it wasn't up to the job, to be honest. The ball link on this one's much more heavy duty, much bigger. I never had an issue out of this. They both have 2mm rods on them, but honestly, the ones from Pilot don't feel as stout and stiff. So if I would not have planned on changing out these ball links, once I got this, I would have. And I saw that from some other people on the website, on the forums, and I thought, I don't know about that. But after seeing them, I do think that these ball links are not sized for a plane like this, especially if you're going to be doing 3D work and hard stuff. So definitely look at that and consider if, when you do this build, if you want to change this out. Now I'm changing out to the 3mm heavy duty Dubro ball links, which are really nice, but they don't really make a 3mm rod, so I'm going to actually pick up some titanium Prolene 440 rods from Hangar 9. 440 measures out to be 2.8mm, so 2.8 going into 3, it'll do just fine. Then we get into some more basic stuff. These are the ones for the side force generator. This Allen wrench actually goes to the grub screws in these wheel collars. Then you got an extra wing bolt, which is white. I don't know why they sent a white one when the other ones are black. The only thing I can think is it would be a good reminder that you probably need to change out the other wing bolt if you mess one up. So maybe white is a good idea. And then control horns, I still need to get those epoxied in. Just waiting to get some of these other things going. And then some straps for the batteries, which I will end up using this. It's actually a really good width for mounting right across this center section for my flight pack. So I'll end up using that and then going through here with the strap. Wheels, basic wheels, they feel okay. They're probably a little bit heavy. I may switch these out to foam lightweight Dubro wheels at some point. And then this push rod, which is more than enough. This is if you're going gas. This is for your throttle. And this one would be just fine, no issues there. So another thing that I thought that Pilot RC, one of the things, this is not glued into place, by the way, if you were thinking. These hinges are not up to some Robart standards, stuff I've used before. So a little hint and trick on these, I usually put these in to where this is nice and 90 degrees to my hinge line, but these don't really sit on this hinge pin at a really good angle. So what I found was I really needed this hinge pin to be parallel to the hinge line and not so much worry about the hinge. So yeah, this is actually a good example. So this is actually off a little bit to the top of the rudder, but when I go to this side, it's off a little bit to the top of the rudder. So it kind of sits at an angle. I found with these other ones that when you put it into the other side of the wing, it straightens out. There's no issues with it. But just be mindful of that. If you stick this in with epoxy and just get this 90 degrees, you may find that when it goes to this side, it's actually not moving correctly. So make sure you go to both sides, check it, make sure that hinge pin is parallel to the hinge line, and you shouldn't have any issues. So I've got these wings going. Again, these are all glued in, no issues. Nice and easy movement, plenty of movement. I tried to minimize my hinge gap here, and that's fine. But when I started laying out my servos, so the way they've got this. They've actually done some really good things, which are pretty cool. I hadn't seen this on the Pilot RC, but I've already opened this up to a standard size. I'm using standard size servos. They come size for minis. But with one of the cool things they do is they provide this little loop right here to keep your servo wire so you don't have to chase it down in the wing, and that is really pretty cool. I like that. But when I got putting these servos in, the way they show it on the website and in their wing, they show it with the arm away from the hinge line. So flip this over, so I show it more like this, and that's actually nothing particularly wrong with that, and the rod that comes is actually sized for this distance. But when you start running this wire through, it's actually on the wrong side, so it doesn't run straight into this little keeper area. So it will cross the wing. There's enough spaces in there, it'll cross and get into this area, but by the time you get here, there's a very little bit of that servo wire sticking out. So I didn't like that. So what I'm gonna do is actually reverse these, because I actually think maybe Pilot made a change, but I think they're actually supposed to be in like this at this point. See if I can get this arm back on. There we go. So it doesn't change the angle here very much, but it shortens this rod. But now when we come out with this wire, it comes straight out our hull, really nice, and it leaves me a good inch or so coming out of the wing. It'll make it really easy to plug this in once I get the wing mounted on the airplane. So I am going to change that. I'm going to find out if it was a mistake or not, but I think it'll be fine. I've already picked up the rod, a shorter rod for this, and that should be here soon. So that's kind of my update. Some things I like, some things I don't like, but I am still really excited to get this one in the air. But I'm gonna have to take a minute, pause, get some of this construction done, get this scoop in place, do some final cleanup for my receiver over here, just put in a bar basically. Now one thing I did have the idea of doing a redundant power system on this. So I would use the BEC for one part of that redundancy, and I would use a small battery, 2S battery, for the other part of it. And I may still do that. I'm not sure, still on the fence about that. And if I do that, I'll actually mount that receiver battery right here, and then I'll be able to run around to the receiver over here, and I'll use that tray for the receiver battery. And maybe if you guys are running gas or just using a receiver battery instead of a BEC, that's a great place to mount your battery, nice clean, up against your flight pack or your fuel tank. So not that this is wasted, but I feel like it's not really going to be a good place to mount my receiver. So I'll keep you guys updated, but it may take a minute to get through some of this construction, get this cleaned up to the way I really like it and my preferences. So I'll keep you posted, keep watching the website, and we'll get this one done. See ya.